Hello, everybody. Che- they're checking connections. I'm going to bring this up and make sure you can hear us. I'm sorry? No. Oh, we got volume good. So we'll turn this down. So you guys can hear me pretty good, right? Hopefully. Yep. So we jumped on a little early. We're going to talk to, who do we, oh, Steve's watching. Because I was testing the volume with it. So, Jasmine is ill, home ill, so she is not joining us today. But I do have Steve here, so we're going to talk about some pottery and different types of pottery and how to tell the difference, stuff like that, which will be pretty fun. And then we're going to talk about shopping vintage and antique stores etiquette. So we got a few things to cover today. So I will repeat this in a few seconds too, just to make sure that everybody jumping on here is going to. Ooh, hi mom. My mom just jumped on.
Hi, Marilyn.
What are you doing?
Coming over.
Oh, you got those. What did you buy?
This is the canisters.
Bring one over and let's see it. So Steve went shopping today on his day off. He's on his day off, but he's popped into. Huh? Oh.
That's the bread box.
Okay. Okay, so he popped in. He just bought. Is it canisters and a bread box?
Yeah.
He bought a bread box and some canisters. Isn't that cool? So, my mom said hello, Steve. So, anyways, this will be out tomorrow. So it's pretty cool that way, right? So we are going to. God, people are jumping on all over the place. They must have known that you're here, Steve. So, like I said, Jasmine is under the weather today, and so she will not be with me on TWL. You will see her next week, which is pretty cool. And I have Steve. He's over there doing other stuff. So, but he just brought in an entire collection of vintage canisters and this bread box. Coffee, sugar, flour. The little one is probably grease, tea, and then the bread box. So I'm going to tell you, bread boxes go crazy. They go really good.
Hello, everyone.
So this is Steve. Wow, they're not sure. Oh, you know what? I need to go under time warp. So, anyways, we'll set that there, and I'm going to switch this over. So, thank you for joining us today, Steve.
You're welcome.
So, I am going to do this. So tell us, what are you doing on your day off? Besides this?
Watch them cut down the tree out front.
Oh yeah, they did. Our tree in our front yard on the area that between
The easement.
The easement got struck by lightning in the last big storm. So they had to see. Look at this. I cannot talk and do something.
They had
at
to
the same
cut it
time.
down.
They had to cut
And
it down.
I just happened to be there to watch.
Where'd Facebook go? There it is. So, just a moment, people.
Yeah. That tree had been there for 55 years, and it was gone in 45 minutes. They didn't even get up there and take the branches off. They just cut the whole tree, laid it in the street, and then chopped it up. I've never seen it done that way.
And how long did it take?
45 minutes.
45 minutes. That's it. Wow,
And
that's
now
crazy.
we get a lot of sunshine in the front window.
So anyway, Steve's here, you guys, and I was hoping that I could, under the time warp one, see who's all on, but of course I can't see who's all on because they don't show the name anymore. So Steve and I have owned Time Warp for how long now? 14 years?
Going on, yeah.
Going on 14 years. We opened in 2011, but prior to that we set up at like Rolla Flea Market, we set up at different flea markets and all sorts of stuff. Then we opened our first store in 2011 down the street in a little tiny store. But Steve has been doing this for years.
I've been collecting since I was a kid.
Your mom used to drag you to places.
She used to take me to garage sales and stuff.
So you've shopped many vintage antique stores in the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've probably done more estate sales and garage sales, but I go to stores too, yes.
But you know what? I'm talking about shopping etiquette. So it goes for garage sales, estate sales, thrift stores, antique stores, and vintage stores, right? It's all the same.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, yeah, absolutely.
So, a couple of things that I wanted to talk about, you guys, is when you're shopping in a vintage store or an antique store, there's a way you should handle the clothing and handle the items, right?
Respectfully.
Well, that's how you should do it in any business, really. But we're running across a lot of issues where people are, because it's not secondhand. Well, it is, but because it's used product, they don't think it should deserve the same amount of respect as if they would.
There's still a certain stigma in secondhand goods.
Right. So we're going to cover a few things that I think is important, that when you're shopping vintage stores or antique stores or garage sales, estate sales, anything for that matter, is these are items that belong to people.
Correct. Right?
They took time in picking them out and stuff like that. So, for instance, we will start with, over here, let me go grab it. We'll start with something like this. So, we have something like this on a hanger, right? It's a 1950s shirt, right? Yeah, I would say 1950s. It's written right on it, I think. No, it's not. But it's by Liner. It's 1950s, but the material is like a, what would you call that?
Rayon?
Like a rayon, right? So we see a lot of people who, when they're shopping through clothes, they will literally, oh, I like this, so they're going to walk around with it. And this is how they carry it.
Okay. They wad it up in a ball in their hand to carry it around so they're not trailing it or knocking something off with it.
So do you guys think this is a good way to treat vintage clothes or clothes in general? Because what if you decide, oh, that's a good point. So what if you decide you don't want it, right? So you're going to put this back on the shelf or hang it back up. But in the meantime, you've walked around with it like this forever, right? That's why I picked this one.
And the sweaty palms have made it crease and
yeah.
wrinkle.
But because you're holding it like this, look what's happening. Right? You're starting to damage the material. And I grabbed this one purposely for this reason, because this is how it was damaged today. Okay? So the thing is when you're coming in and you're buying clothes, and you know what? A lot of you are probably sitting there thinking, oh, those are the kids that are doing that. It's shockingly, it's not. It's every age does this. So you've got a shirt that's lasted since 1950. And we just destroyed it because we didn't walk with it like this. Mm-hmm. Or say, and we walk up and say, would you like us to hold that for you? But, carrying it like this, not only does that ruin the product, but it tells everybody you don't care about it. Yes. It really does. And you've destroyed it, and then you notice that it's ripped, and you're like, oh, I need to put this back. You know what I mean? So the etiquette when shopping is make sure that, especially with vintage clothes, you're dealing with material that may not be around anymore, right? And so the material is going to be thin, it's going to be aged.
It could be dry rotted, it could be structurally unsound. I mean, people have to remember that when you're looking at vintage and used goods, they're going to be more fragile than what you'd find in the stores new. And a lot of people think that just because it's here and that it's in good shape, that it's as good as new. And it's not, because over time, just air and the chemical breakdown in things can cause them to get more fragile. Newspapers and magazines, when people go through them and they go through too fast with their fingers flipping pages, they can chip the edges right off the pages because they're yellowed pages. They can crack the spines. You can separate the spines. There's so many things that you just have to really be careful handling. In a lot of institutional situations, you got to wear gloves to handle this stuff.
Exactly.
Because just the grease from your fingers, your body oil.
Right. Like if this was a 1920s dress, by holding it like that, may not just rip the seam, it could destroy the entire dress, because you're talking about a item that is 100 years old.
Well, it can put stress on areas that never had stress before and cause them to fail.
Like so. So, we just ask for, be respectful of the product. Even though it's somebody else has had it and loved it, this thing has lasted throughout time. So we want to make sure that these types of things last throughout time, so that every generation can experience and enjoy the vintage fashion, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a shirt, if you don't want to carry it, bring it up to the counter. We approach you different places. I know you don't get that same type of customer service from everywhere you go, but you know, maybe you go around, you leave it there, or you hang it somewhere else, or you ask them where I can hang it. They should actually be coming over and making sure you're doing okay, right?
Well,
So-
ideally, you put things back where you found them, but
If you decide you don't want them.
we as a society seem to have issues with that anymore.
Yeah. So, and another thing is when you're pulling the dresses out and the shirts out, don't just shove them back in between, right? We've loosened up our racks, and some of the racks are loosened. And you know, some of I was looking to see if there was questions. Some of the racks are loosened. If you have a problem putting it in, then you want to make sure that you address it by asking us, because when you shove something in, what you're doing is you're shoving it into the dress behind or in front of it,
It can happen.
and you can rip any of the stuff that's on it. And none of us want to rip anything in a store. You know, same with something like this beautiful blue dress with the bows on the bottom and everything. If this, you know, don't carry it like this. You don't want to do that. If you're going to try it on, make sure you re-zip it. And if you don't re-zip it, let us know, because when you hang it back up and it's unzipped, then somebody is looking at the dresses in front or behind it, and they push it back in, it's going to go in the ripped area or in the unzipped area and cause it to rip.
Or the other thing with the clothes, specifically the zippered clothes, a lot of times have been stress on the threads that are holding the zipper in place.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get in there and you just think you have to wear this and you're putting a sausage in a casing, you're liable to pop the zipper or at least pop the threads. And we get a lot of them that just come back out for the dressing room. They put them back out there. Someone else comes along a week later to try it on,
And it's
the
ripped.
zipper's ripped. You know, you have to be realistic. Vintage clothes fit small, and Jason has a rule of thumb about putting your hands around your neck to determine if something will fit your waist.
Or, you know what? If it doesn't zip all the way up, stop.
Don't force it.
Don't force it. Because when you start to force it, two things happen. One, you can damage the outfit, and two, you become concerned about yourself. Because this should fit me. It's a size 12. Well, it's not a size 12 in today's world. It's a size 2 in today's world. But, you know, something like this, which is 1940s, this is an adult, it looks like a child's. So when you try it on or something and you don't want to put it back together, let us know, and we will be more than happy to do it. That's why we're here. The thing that I do ask is that you just don't throw it on the floor in the bathroom. And we find it on the floor in the bathroom. I wish I could put a video up just to see how some people treat things.
We do not put videos in our bathrooms.
I'm talking
Put
about
that
out
disclaimer
here.
out there.
I'm talking about out here. I meant out here in the store, not in the bathrooms. No, I know that. So, and then, you know, with shirts and stuff, even if you just button the top button back, that's all you need.
Well, but it's the same across all the different genres of what we carry. Just be careful. You know, don't have Cheeto dust all over your fingers when you're pulling out records out of the sleeve to look at the actual record. You know, just be mindful of the things you're looking at. You know, when we have cap guns or toy guns or just toys in general, you know, the springs and mechanisms in those are only going to work so many times, but yet we'll have someone come in and they're running around the store, adults and children, popping that trigger on that cap gun 8, 10, 12, 20, 30 times while they're here. Well, that's 10, 12, 20, 30 times less that the end user is going to get out of it before it breaks. All these things have a finite life, and you know, if you abuse them late in life, they're more apt to break and not last. So you just have to take it into consideration. We are a store and we sell things to people, but they're not new items, so you just have to take into consideration their origins, their age, and the fact that they could have issues.
And the reason I say I wish I could put up cameras out here for people to see, because we actually get, when we ask somebody, like for instance, Jasmine, she watched a girl pick up a shirt, look at the shirt, took it off the hanger to try and everything, and which is fine. But then instead of putting it back on the hanger and hanging it up, she literally balled it up and threw it underneath the rack. So, which is shocking, but yet not
Well, it's disrespectful.
exactly. It's
disrespectful to us, and it's disrespectful to our product.
So when she asked her, if you don't want to hang it back up, I'll be more than happy to, and she grabbed it and everything, and it's just surprising to me that people would do that. And then we've had a couple that even look at us and say, well, you work here, that's your job. No, it's not our job to follow after you and pick up after you. It's our job to make sure that you have product that is good, that is not damaged,
Is clean and usable.
clean and usable. And when we have customers that are throwing them under the racks and telling us that that's our job, it becomes daunting and very discouraging. And we love our job, but when we have to run behind somebody because they're carrying a book like this, like so,
Folded in half.
folded in half, and I've seen books from the early teens being folded in half by people walking around. And I know it's an unconscious thing to do, but these books can then stay that way, or you've lost value in them.
Just remember your circumstance.
Yeah, and this show's not going to be about bitching about
I was going
customers.
to say, because this
It's
is going to
not.
be a downer.
But I do want you to understand that just because we sell used items as a vintage and antique store, we pay for these items. We do not get them donated to us. We actually have to physically pay people for them.
Personally go out and look for every item here.
Yeah.
So everything I found at one point, and I was thrilled to have it in my hands or to be able to have an opportunity to get it, only to get it in here and have it be looked at as, oh, it's used, it's nothing.
So, I'm a firm believer that we are our children, and us are the products of who trained us, of who taught us. So please, when you're in a store like this, or any store with a child, teach them to be respectful to the product, whether it's used product at a garage sale or brand new product at Nordstrom's.
And I do have to put this out there that most of the people that bring the young children into the
They're
store,
actually not the issue.
the children are well behaved and not the issue.
No.
It seems to be more the young adults and the adults
The adults
that really
I
have
look
an
at it,
issue.
It's funny because I will find somebody who is 20 doing that. Now, okay, let me explain why you don't do that, right? Or something like that, and they're fine. But then when I see somebody my age who's 53, 54 years old, who has been through life and knows it and still does it, and then looks at you and says, well, you're the employee, that makes me question their,
Mental stability.
Anyways, and the only other thing I have to say about that is, you see the lamp up here? You see this lamp up here, you guys? Don't try and reach for that yourself. That is what we are here for. We almost had somebody get very hurt by reaching for something over here without telling any of us that they were looking for it. We want you safe in these stores. We want you safe. So please, 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 when you are in here, think twice about the actions you take when you go to reach for something that is out of your grasp.
And anybody that does come into our store knows that we greet people. We tell them that if they have any questions, need help,
Hi,
or
Brett.
look for anything specific, to please let us know. Don't be afraid to ask.
Don't.
And I understand completely, because I've been in shops where the employees are so standoffish that, or in the middle of conversations amongst themselves, they don't even acknowledge a customer standing there to ask a question or ask for help. That's not how it is here. We are always glad to help. We prefer to do it for you.
Absolutely.
That way, nothing gets damaged and you don't get hurt.
We had we've had kids in here. We've had 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 5-year-olds who will say, yes, sir, no, sir, thank you, may I see this, stuff like that. And that is fantastic. I just want the people who are adults to do the same thing. That's all. Anyways, so we're going to talk about, that's it for that. And we're going to talk about pottery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's your favorite pottery?
My favorite?
And you guys tell us what your favorite pottery pieces are, okay? Because we're going to be talking about pottery, because I have got to steal the knowledge from his mind whenever he's here.
I like Roseville, but I like a lot of the art potters too,
Do you have a specific one?
Not specifically. I just like the more, less mundane, the more original.
So you mentioned Roseville, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have Roseville. Everybody knows Roseville like this, right? The
Mm-hmm.
decorative Roseville. This is what? Do you know the name of this pattern?
That's your art pottery.
This is their art pottery, right? And I'll show you close. A lot of people love
Looks
Roseville.
like freesia.
It does look like freesia, but you can see here Roseville, and I'll show you the mark underneath. Roseville, and I've shown you guys before that they can fake this Roseville mark, so you want to be diligent
But they're
on
not
knowing.
good at faking the colors.
No, they're not.
The colors usually give away a fake.
I might have a fake over there. I can show you.
Either that or the other thing on a fake is how this is a embossed number. A fake will be incised.
It'll
to
be
where
what?
it's incised. It's cut into the actual, because it's not part of the mold. They added it by hand later, whereas this is part of the mold. This is embossed on there, so it
Okay,
sticks out.
so let me show you what he's talking about. You see it's embossed down there, so it's raised. So it was in the mold when it was being made.
Correct.
Correct? So this is what you want to look for. So it's in here and it's raised. So you want to make sure that that's what it looks like when you buy it.
Some of the fake ones will be more incised. Where
Hi,
it's not-
Gabby.
you don't feel it raised.
Billy.
It's actually sunken in and carved.
Billy's watching,
Mm-hmm.
Gabby's watching. We're gonna see. I'm gonna see you this weekend, Gabby.
This is Roseville, but so is this.
But so is this.
This is Roseville, but this is a different Roseville. The thing you have to remember is that pottery companies back in the 19th century, they would congregate
Roseville.
and form companies and communities near beneficial clay deposits. That's why the Ohio Valley has so many different pottery companies. So you have Roseville, which is, I think it's Roseville, Ohio, but then this is the Ransford Bottom Roseville Company. This is the RRPC.
And so, what is the difference between the two? Because that is
Well,
not
because
embossed.
they both have Roseville in their name, but they're from the same area.
so are
it's-
they the same company?
No, they're completely
Okay.
different companies who just happen to have settled in the same area to access the same clay deposits.
But this Roseville does have a utilitarian line, right?
This company originally started making sewer tiles and clay sewer pieces and
really?
tiles for the floor. And then in the late 1890s, they started going into decorative pottery and artware. And this is their lines that came out that were considered art pottery. It was higher end giftware to make and sell in stores and gift shops.
So-
Whereas they also made a utilitarian line that they supplied the flower shops and places like that with for roses for their or flower vases for their roses and stuff.
So that
And
would be for
that's gonna be like
plants.
Floraline. They'll have a different name. It'll be a variation. It's still Roseville, but it's just different levels of quality and workmanship. And you start getting into other pieces that aren't molded like this is, and those are larger coiled pieces. And when
That
you
one?
start, no, that'd be molded.
Okay.
But when you make big, huge pieces of pottery, it's
Jog in there.
you really can't. Some of those
Yeah.
would be, but they would actually start out with just a long snake or rope of clay, and they actually coil it on the wheel, because a hand-turned pot is always going to be better than a molded pot. They turn it on the wheel, and then they start smoothing out, so it looks like
Like that?
it's just coils. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
coiled up like a coiled rope.
All right.
And then as they work it and they're spinning it, they're taking the water and they're filling in those lines and smoothing it out. So then you can't really see, because it's hard to fire pieces that big in a mold.
Oh, okay.
So on bigger pieces, they would use coiled pottery. It's a hand-thrown pot is what it's called.
Oh, okay.
And hand-thrown pots are always more expensive. And I don't think any two are exactly alike.
Well, because they would be hand thrown.
Correct.
So let me ask you. So the value on a Roseville piece has gone down
Considerably.
considerably because something like this would have cost what back in the
What do we
let's
have
say the
on it now?
90s, 75.
If we had 75 on that back in the 80s and early 90s, that was probably $300 to $400.
So it has dropped it has dropped in price over the years. Is there a price difference between this and that? Lower, not that one, but a utilitarian.
Because
So
one was made in less quantities and it was more expensive new, whereas the other was made in massive quantities and was less expensive new.
Okay, so and this is a Roseville pottery out of the same area, just a different company.
This is the Ransbottom.
Okay, so
Roseville
is there
company.
is there like one is one better than the other?
This is more utilitarian. They never got into the art pottery to this degree.
Okay, and most people who like Roseville collect the art pottery.
Correct.
Okay, and the price will depend on the pattern that's on it, or the
Well,
shape that it is.
the form of the piece itself, which would be the shape or what it is, whether it's a vase or a creamer or whatever, and the color. Some colors are rarer than others, and some form or some motif. Be it freesia or be it hydrangea or whatever the flower is. Different flowers can have clematis is
Awesome.
one,
Right.
gardenia.
So Roseville is what a lot of people look for when it's an antique. Like they're looking for gifts and they go to antique stores or the malls. They see a lot of Roseville around.
Roseville was a better pottery in the 50s, 60s, and 70s when people were growing up. So they knew that that was something that was special to their mother, their father, their grandmother, or whatever. So they have fonder memories of it now, and it's just carried over into the mentality and desirability that people have for it because of the nostalgic aspect.
So people who like the Roseville tend to like Hull as well, Hull.
Well, Hull is a more muted colors. There's some people that prefer the Hull colors over the Roseville colors. Hull is usually much more muted pastels, whereas Roseville is much brighter pastels.
So, and there's two types of Hulls. There's Hull and Hall. The Hall tend to be more dishes, stuff like that, right? Hull tends to be more art pottery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, cost difference between Roseville and Hull, because they are very similar in styles, Hull tends to be more cost effective.
It's
correct?
less. I have to think there's more of it out there. I think when it was new as an art pottery as well, and somebody saw a shelf of Hull and a shelf of Roseville in a gift shop back in the 50s or 60s, the Roseville would have been more expensive then, and it still is.
And then the other one that they collect, which is Weller, which is similar again.
Weller is up there with Rookwood and some of the others as being some of the better, higher end art potters from the early 20th century, yes.
So this is Weller, and I'll show you the tag, right? So this is Weller. Is it upside down? No. This is Weller, right? So Weller, I love is there something different between Weller and Hull and Roseville? Like, are they known for anything else?
All
More
of them
unique shape?
probably started, most all the art pottery companies started in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and they were all going for the new wave that people were decorating their living abodes with pottery. Prior to that, it really wasn't a thing. It was something that's more utilitarian, but the arts and crafts movement really propelled it. And in the early 1900s, a lot of these companies started doing the art pottery. A lot of the artists that worked for these companies would leave one company, go to another, and some of them worked at all of them, some worked at one, and the like Puabic and some of them had glazes that were trade secrets, and they brought a lot of these guys over because the arts and crafts movement started in England, and over there they were doing it first. And a lot of those guys came over here and started working for the art potters here. And that's what really propelled the sense of quality and expense, was having these designers come in from Europe that were now working for the American companies.
So this is my mind. When I walk into an antique store and I look at the Weller, the Hull, the Roseville, and even some of the McCoy for that matter, do people still look at that as grandma's pottery? Like, oh, that's all old school, that's all old stuff.
I think there are always going to be some that do that, but it's how they remember it and how they've processed it in their mind and have their memories. But it has gone down in popularity, but there's always going to be a market for it. It's never going to be something nobody wants.
So the top ones would be, of the three that I have there, it would be Weller than Roseville, or Roseville than Weller. Because I know that Hall is the more economic.
There's Weller pieces that can be more than Roseville, but
there's
I
Roseville
think-
that can be more than
I
Weller.
mean, I don't know for certain, but I think Weller was a smaller company.
Was
I think
it?
They
So
made
less.
less. But I think, just thinking back to my mind of what an expensive piece of Weller is versus an expensive piece of Roseville, I think Weller had more premium lines and pieces than Roseville in that they had some that were really unique. You've seen some Weller where it's kind of the glazes with the Indians on them and stuff, the early 20th century stuff. Some of that used to go for a small fortune in the 80s and 90s. And Rookwood's another one.
I was going to say Rookwood.
Rookwood did molded pieces, but Rookwood did thrown pots as well. And the rarest of the rare for Rookwood is the what do you call it? I lost my train of
Iridescent.
no, that would be Pewabic.
Yeah, and we're in Michigan, and we have the Pewabic here in Detroit, so we should probably go down and actually do a show from there or something.
But
Get a hold of them.
Rookwood still has pieces that are thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But they used to be
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
several thousand, tens of
Right,
thousands.
because we get a lot of people who will come in and they'll do you have Rookwood? Do you have all these top end potteries and stuff? So I'm holding these. These are Shawnee, right? Shawnee is another Ohio pottery,
I don't know if they're Ohio or not. They may be,
but Midwestern.
more than likely.
More than likely a Midwestern. Shawnee, if you guys recognize this, these are the salt and pepper shaker that match the cookie jars.
Smiley cookie jars.
Smiley cookie jars.
Smiley the pig.
Smiley the
And
pig.
Winnie the pig.
Yep, and some of you may remember those from Grandma's house or Mom's house or great grandma's house for that matter. But Shawnee is another pottery. These again are utilitarian pottery pieces.
Shawnee was much. Shawnee made a lot of the cornware you see, where it's a pitcher or a creamer that's like an ear of corn. But Shawnee did a lot of cookie jars.
Yep.
They did a lot of lower end utilitarian wares. But the funny part on the cookie jars specifically, the
And the
Smiley
cookie jars look just
and
like
the Winnie,
these.
is that the color of the scarf or kerchief.
Yep.
And a lot of times
The
in the
camera's on that
factory,
side, so.
in the factory, they would go over them and put gold leaf clovers on them. They would add a lot of decoration, and for the more decoration that's on a Shawnee cookie jar, and the color that's on the Shawnee cookie jar of the decoration, can make it worth 2 or 3 times what it is without.
So I brought these because they were easy to grab, but we do have both cookie jars as well, like you see here.
But you'll see a lot of variations in the cookie
a
jar,
lot of variations.
in the decoration.
And the cookie jars tend to go for couple $100.
They used to.
I think we have ours anywhere 80 to 120.
Yeah.
But they used to be 200 to 400.
Absolutely.
But these are the salt and pepper shakers, or they can be whatever you want them to be. Like they could be sugar shakers, they could be decorative, just
By
set up.
today's standards, these are small sculptures.
Small, yeah, that's a good way
I
to
mean,
put it.
you can buy one, you can buy the pair. Chances are you're never going to use them for their stated purpose of seasoning food.
Right.
More than likely, and in most cases, what they did then, they weren't, made for necessarily seasoning food.
Right.
They were statues, they were decorative items to put around the kitchen.
So that's Shawnee, and then I have here, and I looked all over the place for one of their art potteries, and we've had some good stuff from the McCoy. From McCoy, this is McCoy, and it's going to be hard to see, but it does say MCCOY on the bottom. It's a little difficult to see. I'll see if you guys can
This
see
is
it.
considered their
It's kind of in
quilted
there.
planter.
This is their quilted planter, which is
Jardiniere.
really kind of cool in a way. But this is their utilitarian line, and if you guys have walked into the Happy Face cookie jar, that's a McCoy. The dog is McCoy. The dog cookie jar. They made a lot of animal, a lot of figural pieces, like a lot of the planters you see, like the windmill planter, the stuff like that. They do a lot of those. But we had once a McCoy Brothers something, didn't we?
Well, early on, when they were still making sewer tiles and sewer pipes.
I cannot believe they made sewer
all
tires.
of them did. That's
sewer
how
tiles.
they all started out.
Well, like Tiffany with the stained glass windows for churches, I guess.
Well, yeah, but prior to that, Tiffany made a lot more utilitarian. Where in the 1860s,
Right.
1870s, they weren't the high-end gift store.
No, not
that they
until
were
later.
later. But one of the things I did want to point out when you're looking at pottery is like on this piece is if there's any cracks or any
Yes.
damage to
I think I
a piece
have.
of pottery,
I think I grabbed one. didn't
you
I?
want to do the ring test.
The ring
And
test.
basically, that's just this.
Right here.
Hear how that? If you do it and it's just
have
got
one
kind of
that's
a
cracked.
dull thud, that means there's a hairline in it. And if you look close, you'll find it somewhere. But if it rings,
It has
if
to
it
be open,
rings,
right?
yeah, it's got to be a bigger piece than an open.
I don't know
spot.
if I have one that has a crack in it. Okay. So, did you guys hear that? Give me a thumbs up, a smiley face, something. If you guys heard that. Do you hear it's almost like a bell, right? You want to hear that sound because if it had a crack in it, it'd be a thud. He's looking for something now that can show you, but you want that ring. You did hear it. Good, Gabby. You want that ring because you're going to be putting if you put a plant in this and you water it, the last thing you want is the water to work its way out of the crack. And then that will cause it to separate, and the next thing you know, your pot cracks in half. And you got dirt all over the place. Did you find one?
Yeah, actually, that one may have.
Really?
A
Because
little bit, 'cause this one actually rings better.
yeah, but there's no crack in this.
But this one
It might be the thickness.
could be. It could be how they're holding it too.
Yeah.
But I don't see anything that has a.
No. See, so we try not to sell stuff that breaks and cracks, but if it's a really good piece like a rookwood, we're going to do it because it's going to be it may not be anywhere near what it's worth, but somebody who can't afford a rookwood would love to have it just sitting up top. That is why you will go in and you will see like Roseville and Rookwood and Weller, and if there's a little chip in it or a little crack in it or something, they're still selling it. But it should have an AI as is next to it so that you know what you're getting. Because if they're selling a damaged item, they have to let you know it's a damaged item so that when you get home, you can use it appropriately, right? Oh, he found one. I love that. Oh, that's a big one too.
Flower pot.
It's a floor flower pot. Is it by anybody special?
You see the hairline right there.
Okay. I'll show him that in a minute. So this has got the crack in it. Nothing. It just
You
sounds.
can actually see it
Where is it?
right here.
Right here. So you can see it right here. You guys can see it right here, maybe. Right where my finger is. Oops. Let's go this way. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, you guys.
But you can hear it. That's
But you can hear it. Yeah.
But you always want. You don't want to hold it from the side. You want to hold it
Hold
from,
it
the,
from the
bottom,
bottom.
so that nothing's dulling the vibrations. You just tap it.
So it's funny because some imperfections on vintage pottery are incurred during the firing process. We're actually going to be getting to that in a moment. Yep. That's absolutely true. They do not affect the value like aftermarket damage. Absolutely. That would be what we're going to be talking about next. And thank you for pointing that out because there are factory flaws in pottery, just like there are in glass. And when you have a factory flaw in pottery, that does not reduce the value. Tammy is absolutely correct on that. And sometimes it can even enhance the value a little bit. Steve, are you grabbing something with a factory flaw?
I wasn't. No.
Oh, I don't know. We have stuff, but
Well, sometimes it's just the glaze doesn't.
right, the glaze
cover the
doesn't cover a spot completely.
Here's a manufacturer's flaw in a piece of glass.
Yeah, it's going to be very similar. It's going to be
Is that
very
inclusion?
similar. This inclusion right here in this glass, you can see people will think that there's something wrong, but that is a factory flaw in this glass. And pottery is the same thing. Remember, humans make these things, and we are meant to be flawed, so we make flaws. So,
I'm trying to find some.
yeah. So he's looking on it, but thank you for pointing that out because that is absolutely true. Even figurines, anything made with pottery, anything made by hand can have factory flaws in it. It's kind of like when you buy a record. I ran a record store for years. It's kind of like when you buy a record and people look for imperfections on a record, meaning that it has the same label on both sides. and makes the record more expensive because it's harder to find, right? So the factory flaw could only be on that one piece, or the factory flaw could be only within what was in that kiln. But it is important to understand that when you're looking at pieces that are made like glass and pottery and stuff like that, the factory flaws, that is not damage.
I'm not really seeing much, but like here, you can show where the glaze didn't completely cover that rim.
Okay, oh, and this is California Padre. So these are Padre California, and you can see a slight factory flaw right here because the
glaze didn't cover.
The glaze did not cover that rim right there. That is not a piece of damage. That is a factory flaw.
Or like even on this one here, you can see there's that little swirl where the glaze did,
Yep.
and there's a glaze pop. Those are flaws that are from the manufacturer.
This right here, I don't know if you guys can see that little pop right there, right above my finger.
It's not a chip.
That is not a chip. That is a factory flaw.
And what about the little swirl?
Do you see that right there? And then the swirl, which is over here, looks like somebody sat a drink on it. That is a factory flaw. So,
Now, one other thing I do
Yep.
want you to do is when you're looking at things that are fired in a kiln, a lot of times things are put, they have to be raised off the ground. When they're put in, the glaze is wet and it'll stick. So what they do is they put things on little stilts and little tripods. So like you might look at this blue plate and think, or platter, and think that it's got manufacturer flaws or damage. But what it is these are the marks where the trivet held it up off the floor of the kiln. And when it
The
came
triangle.
out, they had to break that off. Drop.
so the triangle.
No, not the triangle, the dots.
1, 2,
Oh, yeah.
3. The triangle.
But the specific little white dots, those are where the trivet held that up during the firing process.
You can see one here. I can't get close enough here. You can see the triangle within the writing. Those are where they were sitting on something, right? You
Yeah,
said?
a little tripod, like made
Yeah.
out of almost.
Like the things, almost like the thing that holds the top of the pizza box from touching the
Yeah,
pizza.
exactly.
So something like that. So these are little flaws that are in here. These are not damages, and I'm glad you brought that up because to the untrained eye, you look at it and you question it, and you should be questioning this type of stuff because you're going to spend money for this. But when we tell you that that's a factory flaw and explain it to you, you will be able to see the difference on that, on something that is chipped versus something that isn't. So, anyways, that's that. And then
We
we've
also
got.
have to remember, though, too, is a lot of it depends on the quality control and the reputation of the manufacturer. Royal Dalton, Hummels, there's certain things that they had higher quality controls, Tiffany, Rookwood, whereas you start getting to some of these novelty ware makers out of Holt Howard and Inesco and some of these that were making the novelty kind of cheap giftware in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. When you see that stuff, there's going to be more flaws in that because the quality control in the higher end manufacturers like Dresden and things like that they're going to be looking for little things that are going to make something unsaleable. Whereas the cheaper manufacturers are just pushing this stuff out, they're going to sell it cheap at gift shops. They let a lot more go. So you'll find more manufacturing flaws, especially when they did the spray paint on some of the figurines and stuff. You'll see smears where fingers have touched the paint and smudged it. It still went out with a guy with a little figurine with a beard with a black side of his cheek with a fingerprint pushed up in it. It's just, the way they did it.
So this is Ceramica de Terraras, which is a Mexican pottery. And I love it because look at the shape of it. Hello.
And it's volcano glaze.
It's volcano glaze, so it's
Or
got a
lava
really
glaze.
cool glaze on it, right?
Lava glaze.
Lava glaze, volcano glaze. Isn't that thing sharp? I love the extension of the pour spout, right?
Texture.
And the texture. So let me tell you something. This is $10, right? And there's a reason it's $10 because there is damage to it. The handle has been glued back on. So why are you selling this? People are saying. Because look at it. It's cool. And we have it marked $10 as is. So it explains what's wrong with it because we want to make sure that you know what you're getting. This isn't meant to be picked up and used as a utilitarian piece. It's meant to just sit up and looked at fabulously. That is why we sell it, because we don't believe in just damaging something. If we broke our arm, should we be thrown away? No, we repair it and we be careful when we use it. That's why we sell this. And that's the sticker underneath. Isn't that funny? But it should, when you're in stores like this, you should be 100% assured of what you're buying. So it should say as is on it.
But in the same respect, there are some forms of pottery and molded material like that, ceramics, that are much more likely to be chipped. Cookie jars are a form that damage is somewhat acceptable because more often than not, at some point, some kid tried to grab the top, couldn't reach it, dropped it. So you expect some chips and damage on cookie jars. Another one is tin glazed Majolica ware. It's kind of a redware pottery that's got a thin coating of glaze on it, and it's highly susceptible to chipping. No, more like this. Kind of more like this. This is newer, but kind of.
But similar to something like this is what you're talking about?
We have some here. But it's a very soft pottery, so it's more susceptible to getting nicks. And so the people that collect it know that, and they'll be a little more forgiving about some things than others as far as damage.
This pottery can run expensive. It can be very expensive, actually, because it's art, right? And some pottery can actually be considered folk art. Some can be considered, standard art, whatever.
And some is third grade art class.
Yeah, and that can be folk art 100 years down the road.
In the same respect, we have found pieces that were done by kids in school in the 60s and 70s, and they had such a either odd or grotesque look to them that I have picked them up and sold them in the store to people who have literally bought other people's third grade
Actually,
art projects.
It's funny that you say that because we have a pottery cookie jar over there that my friend Lori's daughter Courtney made.
Oh, okay.
When she was a kid, and it's over there, and it's one of the coolest things.
Oh.
So yeah. So can you tell me about this? Because this is one of my favorite pieces here.
This is more modern. This is probably more 80s, 90s. It's by a design group. Sometimes these art ceramicists or potters will get together and form like a little collective, and there'll be a little group of artists that work together and market and kind of advertise their wares. And this one comes out of a group called the Anderson Design Art Pottery Company.
Hence the AD that's written at the bottom.
Now this one is actually whoever was a designer of this. They're quite prolific in that I found a lot of this same decoration on a lot of pots in varying sizes and shapes. So this was something that they must have found people wanted and did well. So they probably spent most of the 80s and 90s or even 70s selling these at art shows around the country or out of their little collective studio.
You know what I love about this is it's the texture is two different textures. You've got the soft texture on the outside, which has probably got a small vitrification, a little glass covering. And then the tree seems to be raw, almost like a burning effect, like on wood.
The one thing I do like about a lot of the artist-designed pottery is that they do color, texture, form,
That is one of my favorite
size. Their mind somehow creates so much more than what just early 20th century potters were doing. I mean, the way that surface is on that, it actually adds depth to the tree branches themselves.
It does. It absolutely does, and you can see that in there.
And it's not. It's just a matter of the texture and glaze that's been applied over the actual decoration.
And it feels almost, yeah. You guys have to come in and take a look because it is really cool. Some studio potteries by acclaimed artists can be valuable too. Oh, of course they can. And I love the fact that you have this knowledge. Tammy, it's pretty cool. So, these, because we have a whole bunch. I like the drip blade.
You've seen the Ukrainian eggs, the wood eggs that are decorated and painted so fancy by Ukrainian ethnic artists. This is a line of Bulgarian. This is something that's native to Bulgaria. It's a form that they've been doing probably for centuries, and it's something that they sell to tourists, and they probably families have little cottage industries or shops where they've been selling this for generations and making it. A lot of times, you'll have second, third, and fourth generation family members working in these places doing it. It's the same thing with the Mexican silversmiths in Mexico. A lot of those are third and fourth generation of artisans that have been doing this for generations.
So I know that mid-century pottery is all the rage, kind of like this, right here. Also similar to maybe something like so, which I got to tell
That's
you.
more modern.
Yes,
That's much
but
more
the
modern.
form is fantastic, is it not?
Yeah.
The form is absolutely fantastic on this. It's a pitcher, and you could use it because it's vitrified inside.
It's a picture or a ewer.
A ewer. Vitrification is the process of putting sand over the pottery to turn it into glass to help so that you can drink and eat off of it. They do the same thing for dishes.
And for salt glazed pottery, they actually add salt to the firing process, and it covers the entire exterior of the pottery.
So does this not scream 80s?
But that's actually 50s.
I know, it's 1950s. Isn't that hilarious? It screams 80s because it almost looks like splatter paint, which was big, but this is
In
19...
the 80s, there was a lot of retro and
And you can see
imitation or
underneath.
homage to a lot of the deco designers. A lot of people see deco ceramic pieces from the 80s and think they're actually from the 30s and 40s. And
Now that's a factory flaw, isn't it?
Yeah, that was a smudge in the paint.
Okay, here's a factory flaw, a good factory flaw. That's a smudge in the paint while it was firing. It almost looks like a high heel shoe. But it does scream 80s. So if you have the splatter paint look from the 80s, this would match beautifully. Mm-hmm. You know? And then some of the other, what cool mid-century do we have? What do you have there? Oh, can you hand me the little red one? So something like this is cute.
That's more modern.
This is more modern as well. This is material good. It's called Hot Tamale, but how fun is that? It's a little single bud vase. So pottery will never go out of style because it's being made today as well as it will be made every day. I mean, look at this. Isn't that gorgeous? I mean, this here you have
This is either European or
made in
oh, it's an island.
Morello?
Marella. I think it's an island. I don't
Yeah,
remember looking
island
at it.
pottery. But still, look at this right here. See that? Oops, let's go this way. Look at that. Isn't that fantastic? I love the pattern. The pattern would go great in a mid-century home.
This is a more modern piece. It's made to look older,
Oh,
almost tribal.
isn't that cool? This is almost like Ann Arbor Art Fair, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of this, a lot of the art.
Look at this. And here you
more
can
modern.
see the artist's signature on the bottom. And it's a good heavy piece.
These people make this stuff, and they travel across the country to these
Carrying
better,
it all.
to these better art shows like the Ann Arbor Art Fair.
Right.
And that's how they make their living.
Like, I mean, something like this. This is a homemade piece. Is that homemade?
Oh yeah, that's art pottery.
Art pottery. I mean, these all fit. Look at these gorgeous little pieces. These are great gifts, you guys. Aren't they gorgeous? Then you have something like this that's got the raised, which I think is absolutely, it adds not only texture.
That's applied decoration.
It's applied. It means that it was applied before the firing, but after.
the piece was probably fired, but before the glaze was applied.
Isn't that cool? It gives it the three-dimensional look. I love that.
And this is probably one of the better pieces of mid-century we have.
What is that? Oh, we just got that. I was going to grab that, yeah. So these are Potter. This is a great mid-century piece. So here we have.
It goes the other way.
Does it go the other way?
I think so. I think it's supposed to be a windmill of sorts.
Okay. So it's a tray. So if you're going to college and you love pottery, these are great to sit over your lap. Put your laptop on. But look at this.
In the 60s and 70s, it was a big trend for Danish modern designers to put tile sections into the middle of their wood dining tables.
Oh, so
and it would usually be about double this size and maybe half again as long, and it would just be like maybe 6 to 12 tiles in the center of the dining table, usually with drop leaf ends.
So do you think this was made to sit in the middle of the table on top?
It may have, I'm not sure, but it seems to be aiming the other way as far as. So I think this is the
Yeah.
correct way for it to be displayed. So I'm
'Cause
not
that looks
sure.
like a signature.
It's a signature I've not been able to identify.
So if anybody knows that signature right there, let us know.
Yeah, I've been looking for that one.
That
for
one
days.
right there, you guys, let us know. You see that signature right there? If any of you know it, share the wealth, people. That's a heavy piece. I wish I had some Pewabic to show you. And now I wish I would go down to Pewabic, right? But anyways, let me show you this. So we had a group of people we had a couple of people that came in and wanted only Hagar, right? Hagar, to me, because I worked in the floral industry for a period of time in the late 80s, early 90s, was always what you put flowers in and sent out, right? Well, Hagar is highly collectible. It's an American pottery, and it's highly, highly collectible. And they make some of the coolest vases. That's Hagar. Yep. This is Hagar. Check this out.
They did a lot of the 80s deco-looking men and women.
Isn't that
very
thing
stylized,
fabulous?
solid black.
It's the dog looking backwards. We had the heads, but somebody bought it. I mean, this is fantastic. They also did utilitarian everything, right? As well as ashtrays. Now, you know, Steve and I had this discussion. What do you consider pottery? Well, when I was with Bed Bath & Beyond for many years as a trainer, they would send us to classes so that we could teach people. Hi, Shirley. That we could teach people on, or teach the employees there on the product we sell. So one of the things I learned while taking classes in dishes and vitrification and stuff like that is anything made with clay is pottery. And it's just different forms of pottery because it's made with clay. So if you add bone to it, it becomes china. If you add, you know what I mean? So it all starts with a pottery base. So ashtrays, which is a pottery base, but, you know, could be china, could be ceramics, could be anything to that effect. But the Hagar look, this is 2002, but Hagar goes all the way back to the late 70s. And Hagar has many different types of signatures, right, Steve?
Yes, well, all of them have variations on their signature.
Yeah, and you can date the piece based on that, too.
And you can actually just Google Hagar marks, and a lot of sites will give you all the different marks, variations, and you can narrow it down to a decade, or sometimes even a year. Like Rookwood has a sunburst mark, but based on the number of rays in the sunburst, you can identify Rookwood to the exact year it was made.
And when I mentioned vitrification, it is the coating so that you can put water in something. So when you look at something like this that's got an unfinished exterior, so it's got a rough exterior, right? And it's a planter, but the inside is completely vitrified. It's covered, it's coated, so that when you put the dirt in the water and you water it, it won't absorb the water. Because what happens is, let's say that this is filthy and you throw it in the dishwasher, you're going to get out a lump of clay probably because it's got no protection. So you want to be careful about that. If you're going to put plants in something, you want to make sure that it can hold water because you got to water them. So the inside of the planter should be coated so that it can withhold water.
The other thing about pottery and ceramicists is that early on in the early 20th century and into the 30s, 40s, 50s, there were a lot of women who their first experiences in being in the workforce and being able to make money to support their families was through painting pottery or working in pottery factories.
Oh, that's a Hagar.
Some of the
The sticker version.
in the 30s and 40s, there were a lot of companies that popped up out in California, and they were basically little cottage businesses. Heidi Schwoop was one. Florence Ceramics was another.
Oh, yes.
Where these people were basically making these things in their house and selling them. Some of them would end up putting on an addition and have a little showroom or something like that where they could sell their stuff. But they took these women got these businesses going that they couldn't get stable or adequate employment in other areas, and they did this themselves, and they started their own cottage businesses, and they were fairly well known, and they're highly collectible now.
Do you know who this is?
No, not off the top of my head.
But it's dated 1992. At first I thought it was Newcomb, but if it was a Newcomb pottery, it'd be extremely expensive and in the case. Right?
But getting back to the whole thing about women, early on in the 20th century, women used to have ceramic painting parties. And they were usually the richer ones that didn't have to do it. They weren't trying to make a living at it or make a dollar. But they would basically order blanks from the finer French and German manufacturers. And when I say blank, just a piece of white porcelain, a vase, a plate, a charger, a platter.
That's a good mid-century piece.
They would paint them, and then they would sign them. And it was kind of almost like a little sewing circle in that they would sit around and they would do this as a community effort for the ladies.
That's a good mid-century piece.
Yeah, it's a little bit newer.
It kind of would fit in with the design, though. I love it. Look at that. With the little faces on it. Isn't that cool? And I love this. This is Mexico with the little kitty face. So that must be a certain artist that uses
Probably
that.
or a company. Yeah.
Right? It's a certain artist. So those who love this artist would collect anything that has the kitty on it. The sun rising. In Mexico, they used a lot of symbolism like the sun and, you know, different things to identify moods and stuff like that. So I grew up in San Diego, and not that I'm an expert on Mexican culture, but I did, you know, see it a lot growing up. So, but it's pretty cool because it's got the handles on it. And then this one is, I think that was with the little face on it. I love it. Isn't that cool? I love it. There's all sorts of different types of pottery. As you can see here, we've got most of it right here. But
These are some of the most collected McCoy pieces. People love these. They've become a rage again. They love these little McCoy and brush, little with the underplate attached. And ladies love these to do herbs on their windowsills in the kitchen over the sink. And they're looking for these. And the more vibrant the color, the higher the price.
So then you have these little iridescent ones that are so thin, and they're so see how thin that is and everything. It's so dainty, it's so light. I feel like I could just drop it because it's so light. And we have quite a few of these, and these are handmade by Ruth Carroll Designs. And based on the sticker, I'm thinking 60s or 70s. As you can see, the stickers are great, but stickers don't always stay. So knowing form, you can identify based on form, based on character, based on color, the type of I'm losing the type of what, Steve?
What? I was looking for
The type of glaze, the type of everything. You can tell different things by.
well, everything, all the factors of the form, the glaze, the color.
Like if the sticker comes off, you can.
Oh.
Is what I'm saying. This over there.
That's why you got Google Lens.
That's why you got Google Lens. I know. Look at that, and they're so light. Homemade.
Now, generally,
Homemade.
that will be the sign of a better potter.
How light?
One of the most famous and most expensive potters there is George Orr. And George Orr was famous because he did his pinched pots.
Feel that. Feel how light that is.
But George Orr could make something so thin that it was like paper.
We've only had a few things.
Well, we've never had a piece of
We
George
had
Orr.
one, I thought.
George Orr's thousands of dollars.
No,
It's
well, we had
extremely
one
rare.
that was
I've never come
a little
across.
tiny round thing that had the. Anyways,
Oh,
it
you're
went
talking
for like
about-
$300.
You're talking about the Gambino Italian,
The Gambino,
or
yes,
Gambini.
yes.
Um,
So
But George Orr and his pots would come to a really fine little teeny point on the top and a little hole. But the thinner the pottery, the harder it was for the artist to make it. So chances are the better quality it is.
this reminds me of Red Wing.
These were really common cookie jars in the 30s and 40s. We've had the cookie jar 100 times. This is actually from the canister set. It may
Is this
even-
Red Wing?
No.
It's on there.
Ransburg All.
Ransburg All. Look at that. Isn't
That's
that cool?
the grease jar. Anytime.
So they would keep the grease in this. And it's coated. It's coated inside, as you can see. But look how clean it is, so I doubt they left grease in it.
Whenever you come across canister sets, the grease jar is usually always the rarest piece because they didn't survive. The grease leached into the bodies. They just didn't last.
Mhm.
And they were usually the smallest of a canister set. So for whatever reason, they are the hardest to find. Like in Fiesta sets, the grease jar is really tough.
So we're coming to an end of the hour. It's already been an hour. Can you believe that? And you know, I want you to understand that what we talked about at the first part of this is just, you know, we want a good shopping experience for everybody who walks in, not just the people who buy the streetwear or the dresses, stuff like that. So that's why we ask that you just be cautious of how you treat stuff. Ooh, the Bataski, real quick.
Oh, Potassi Raymore.
Potassi Raymore. Raymore is a good one.
Well, Raymore was an importer of mid-century pieces from Italy. So if you see something with a Raymore sticker, more than likely it's not something they produced, it's something they imported. But it is usually indicative of it being a better piece, more desirable piece, and having a Raymore sticker on anything will add value.
And this is the Raymore sticker right here. It says Raymore here as well, Italy, but this is the sticker he's referring to right there.
Yes.
And you see the sticker he's referring to. Also, one of the ways that you can identify a Raymore sometimes is the color.
You're talking Potassi.
Or Potassi.
Potassi.
The color.
They call it
the-
Potassi blue.
Right, is the color. This is an ashtray. I don't know who put their cigarettes out in that because it's such a cool thing. But Raymore is a good name.
Raymore, if you see Raymore in something, yes, it's indicative of being good. But don't try to look it up as the brand.
No, the brand would be right here.
Brand is, you see that
Bag.
tradition, good taste.
It's probably that number.
You could probably figure
Yeah.
out the artist on it, but
Mhm.
and you might get some information based on the Raymore and find a comp, but it's not.
And just
gonna tell
because
you
I
the
need to show a kitschy thing, look at this ashtray. It's homemade.
Mhm.
It's still a form of pottery. Look at that ashtray.
Probably
Isn't
Holland
that
mold.
fantastic? Holland mold.
Now that's,
How do you know that?
It's just they made a lot of the molds that homemade ceramists use. There's only 3 or 4 companies that did.
Yeah.
But Holland mold, I think, is the most common that you'll find. And it used to be that homemade ceramic pieces had no value or desirability.
Not anymore.
But that has changed dramatically. It's
And I'm
very
telling you,
collectible now.
So a lot of the ashtrays we get, the very really big '60s ceramic ashtrays, are homemade.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they made them for their parents in class, or the grandparent made it in
Well,
class.
in the 60s and 70s, there were a lot of women who were married, having kids like my mom, who my dad made enough. She didn't have to work. It was one of the first, you had stay-at-home woman. And just like the women generations before, making the pottery and selling it out in a little cottage business out of their place, or the women painting porcelain in the early 20th century. In the same way, my mom was doing this in the 70s and 80s as a hobby, and that's what I remember. She took me one day there with her, and they were all these women in there, and they're making all their pieces, and they're etching their initials into the bottom, so when it comes out of the kiln, they know which one is theirs, and they're all coming up with all these wild glaze concoctions, and it was just a thing.
So I can't move you guys over there, but we got a lamp that is unbelievable. I think some of you can see it if I move this aside there. It's down there. You can see it. You'll see pictures of it. That is a pottery lamp with a, it's just stunning. You have to come in and look at
It's a
it.
Plasto lamp.
So what are some of the tips to look for when somebody's out shopping for pottery? What should they look for? In general.
Condition.
Okay.
I mean, if something's got a huge chip out of it, it's not going to have a lot of value to a collector or anything like that. But if it's something that you just like the aesthetic of and it'll look good on a shelf, and you can turn it to face, the bad spot towards the wall, by all means get it. Do the ring test, see if things have a crack. Know what the difference in a manufacturer's flaw versus an actual flaw is. Understand that there are some forms of pottery that are more apt to damage, and therefore the collectors are more acceptable of it, that being majolica or tin glaze or cookie jars or just even ashtrays to a degree, because
And
they were
some of
used
the
more.
Roseville tends to be a
Yeah.
little bit, but people love it. So you want to look for, also keep in mind when you're looking for pottery, what you're going to use it for. If it's just going to be decorative, then you can pick any type of finish. If it's going to be a utilitarian piece that you are going to use, what are you using it for? Is it going to have water in it? You want to make sure that it is glazed on the inside. You do not want to put anything that is not glazed on the outside in the dishwasher or wash or soak in a sink, because you add water to dry clay. What happens? It turns back into clay. So these are tips that you want to look for. So names, you want to look for Roseville. You want to look for Hull, Hull or Hall, depending on if you want dishes.
Well, the other thing you got to remember too is going back to the 20s and 30s, a lot of this stuff wasn't marked on the piece. It was a lot of times a little foil sticker that would have been on the underside or right on the side of the pot. And unfortunately, in most cases,
Like
if it's
so.
been washed once or twice,
Like so.
those are gone. So sometimes you have to try to identify the piece by the form. A lot of times Roseville will have on the bottom, it'll say, or even Hull for that matter, it'll say on the bottom, this says Hull POT, and then it has W8-7.5. Well, W8 would be the form, the identity of this vase in this shape, and the 7.5 would be the overall height. There could be a 14.5 with the same first 3 digit, and a lot of times it's identifiable even if there's not a maker on it. The numbers and form will help you identify it.
Yep. And so these are the tips that you want to, and I'm so glad Steve came in, because he didn't have to, so thank you. It's his day off to give us these tips, because I like to harness your knowledge as much as possible for our viewers whenever you're here. So hopefully you learned some stuff about the pottery, and when you are out at garage sales or flea markets or at antique stores, that you have a little bit more knowledge that will help you in buying the exact thing that you want.
The bottom line is always in any category, buy what you like.
It is. Buy what
buy
you like.
Buy what you like and use
Yep.
it.
You know, I'm a firm believer of saying buy your personality, because we live in a world where everything is gray and this, color it up, meaning that, have your personality out there. I just did a segment on Caffeinated Conversations where, Steve rocks. It's Tammy, or I don't know. I don't know if she's been in before. Have you been in before, Tammy? Next time you're in, if you can come in, if you're in the area, tell us who you are, because your knowledge on pottery is really, really cool. I was just on Caffeinated Conversations with Brooke Allen, and we talked about setting up your dorm room. Don't be afraid to let yourself shine. Don't be afraid to buy what you like and display it. If somebody has a problem with it, they don't have to look at it. So, live your personality, show your personality. And what are you looking for?
I was going to have you show that ashtray, but it's not homemade.
Which one?
The big orange one.
Oh. Yeah, there's a bunch of different ones over here. So you guys will have to come in. You'll have to take a look. Yes, I have. I may come in for that Weller pot. That's funny. I think there's another Weller up there too. And so, anyways, thank you guys so much. And we wish all the speedy recovery for Jasmine. Also, I'm excited to say that that myself and Brooke will be at Hot Wheels, Marysville Hot Wheels, judging. Gabby will be there.
This Saturday.
I'm excited about it. We're also working on possibly getting a show at Mythos, which is pretty cool. Thank you, Steve, for getting that.
Horror museum in the area.
In Pontiac. And a lot of cool things are coming. It's a lot of fun.
Fall's coming.
It is coming. And if you haven't watched Caffeinated Conversations, watch it, because not only will you see Brooke and all the great interviews she does, but you will see me at the end of it. And, you got to see me. So, what else?
This isn't my thing. I'm not used to.
So Steve will be here Saturday all day long. So if you want to come in and pick his brain, please do. I know that we had the St. Clair Shores garage sale this past weekend, and we got inundated today because people who didn't sell everything thought that they could come in and sell it to us. We appreciate that, and we love that you thought of us. But we buy by appointment.
And chances are, if it didn't sell at your garage sale, it ain't going to sell here.
Yeah, unfortunately. So, shoot us some pictures and stuff. But
I'll look at anything.
Yeah.
Don't cost nothing to look.
yep, shoot us some pictures. You can email them to Steve's Time Warp, STEVESTIMEWARP at hotmail.com. Or you can text them to. No, I'm not going to put out your number. You can
I'm
call.
gonna send the cards.
Okay, you can text them to 248-797-1103. And shoot them pictures. And if you know what you want for it, then say that.
If you know what you want for things, include that. But most importantly, allow me time to get back to you. I get
24 to 48 hours, you guys.
I have some people that send me 50, 60 pictures, and I have to go blow everyone up and try to look at what's there. So it can sometimes be time consuming and tedious. So just give me some time to get back to you.
So if there's anything you guys want to know about that we can pick his brain to do, I can arrange to do a show midweek because today is his day off. I can arrange to do a show midweek at some point to pick his brain on it. So if there's anything you want to talk about, because I do want to do a show with you on telling the difference in pictures, because you're really good at that. So knowing, the dot matrix versus the that type of thing.
Without being able to show people what you're looking at with a loop, I don't know how, but we figure it out.
We can figure it out. So, anyways, thank you guys. I know we're running over, but thank you guys so very much. This will be up on YouTube tomorrow. And don't forget to watch us this weekend as well as on Monday and next Tuesday. Jasmine will be back. And that's about it. So thanks a lot, you guys.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Have a good week.